Pete Buttigieg is getting slammed online over his recent appearance on Pod Save America podcast. Asked whether he'd join Senate Democrats in blocking the sale of weapons to Israel, his response seemed non-committal. Take a look.
We need to insist that if American taxpayer funding is going to weaponry that is going to Israel, that is not going to things that shock the conscience. And look, we see images every day that shock the conscience. If a child is starving because of a choice made by a government, that is unconscionable.
And when it comes to making Palestine a state, Mayor Pete said this.
I think that's a profound question that arouses a lot of the biggest problems that have happened with Israel's survival, Israel's right to survival in the diplomatic scene. And many of the people who have taken that step historically have done so for different reasons than what we see happening with European countries. I think we need to step back and we need to do whatever it takes to ensure that there is a real two-state solution.
Now, California Representative Khanna broke with Buttigieg, posting, quote, "I respect Pete, but we need moral clarity, not status quo. Yes, Jon Favreau, Dems should have voted for the Sanders Amendment. Yes, Dems should join my letter recognizing a Palestinian state. Yes, Trump and Biden disastrously failed on Gaza, and we need a new human rights-centered vision."
U.S. editor of Unheard, Soave Amari, posted, quote, "After listening to all this verbiage, I couldn't tell you what Pete believes or suggests could or should happen. Set aside the underlying policy question. This mode of empty blathering doesn't work in politics anymore, left or right." Yeah, I had not seen this clip yet, although I saw a lot of people in progressive circles very unhappy about it. Secretary Mayor Pete isn't their favorite person anyway. And now, having watched it, I see why they were not impressed by the kind of equivocation going on. He just uses a lot of fancy words, not even the fancy words, the same words over and over again. I agree that the actual situation there is complicated in terms of working it out, but I guess it's his job if he wants to be president to figure that out. And then the we should not give them money for weapons is just a very easy one. Like, what the composition of a Palestinian state should be and who should run it, and if it's Hamas, is Israel just going to kill them anyway, is at least a little complicated, whereas I don't know why, especially if you're in a Democratic circle. There are Republicans saying this. Marjorie Taylor Greene believes this. Thomas Massey believes this. Tucker Carlson believes this. Candace Owens believes this. Many of the most important, prominent Republican voices and then some Republican legislators just say, yeah, well, we shouldn't be subsidizing this war. We give them money and then they use that money to buy weapons from us. We could cut out the middleman and they could buy weapons from us like anybody else. We don't have to pay them to do it. It seems just straightforwardly obvious that you could eliminate that, and that it's not even a particularly bold stance, and Mayor Pete can't even come out and say that. He said we need to be careful how the money we give them, well, it's being spent to kill.
And we spared the audience because it would take up like the whole 10-minute segment to play his full response. I unfortunately
went on and on.
Yeah, it went on and on and on.
And you did your homework.
Well, I watched it was like a clip of it because it was a longer, obviously, podcast. I didn't watch the whole thing, but it was just very like word salad. The thing that he has been very critical, interestingly enough, about what Democrats have done wrong. Part of that was Kamala not answering questions directly that she was asked. People felt that she waited too long to do that.
It was a very Kamala answer to a question.
Yeah, but I'm giving her grace because she had 107 days to run an entire campaign, so fine, put that to the side. For somebody who's criticizing what was done wrong by Joe Biden and everyone else, that's Buttigieg, who's been on a podcast spree lately, it's interesting that he can't just answer the question of the most pressing issue. Yes, this is somebody who obviously, because of how much he's been out, wants to run for president again. So I understand why people like Khanna and other leaders are like, what do you mean? Say something, like take a stance. I don't think we're in a space where Americans are accepting like ambiguity in the way that they might have back in politically correctness. It's like, what's your response? What is your answer? What's your take? And, you know, he also, I mean, there's so much to talk about with unpacking what's happening in Israel. And I don't want to have this segment without talking about the Al Jazeera journalist that was killed, because I watched what happened over there, and I know that he's the face of prime time. And I think that we're watching this, 192 journalists have been killed. And as somebody in this industry, I think just watching what's happening in Gaza and no access for international journalists to get to Gaza has been a problem. And so with somebody so dramatically attached to it, even in an empathetic way like he was trying to exhibit, there's much more to be said about what can be condemned about what's happening there, not about ignoring what happened on October 7th or not even adjusting or figuring out how they could have atoned for it, but talking about the point that we're at now and how far we've gone, what can be now corrected or fixed to just make sure that we're saving lives and not killing journalists and innocent people. And I think that on the heels of that news and knowing all the news around it, he could definitely add a ton of color to his conversation and not just give words that he maybe thinks will fall well with all parties. Because even though you're being the party for all people, the president for all people, if he does win, you still need to pick a side on certain issues. And specifically with Israel, you have to, especially because he said in that statement, both Biden and Trump handle it disastrously or not in a good way, right? So if you feel that way,
right,
then what's your difference? You're not going to do anything different.
What do we do differently?
Right, you're not going to do any, because really people argue that they handle it the same exact way.
Right. Vague support for a two-state solution and continuing to arm Israel but not being super happy about everything they're doing is the current policy of the U.S. government. It was the policy of the Biden administration.
That's what I'm saying.
It's the policy of the Trump administration. So, right, if you think it's bad, you need to separate yourself. And also, Pete doesn't usually trip over his words so much. He usually, like him or dislike him, he's usually, I think, relatively on the ball in interviews. He is one of the Democrats who is more comfortable doing hostile interviews with conservative media.
Right.
He's done podcasts at least somewhat successfully. He didn't have a lot of personality. It seemed like he just didn't want to get himself in trouble. He wanted to play it very safe. And this moment doesn't call for safe answers on this issue because the left, is radically opposed to what's going on. If you want to, get some energy and some attention from AOC or Bernie type base, you have to have a more strongly anti-Israel position. This is something, young people are much more against Israel than older generations, from what I've come to understand. It's an important part of the young conservative ideology increasingly, is being very upset with our level of support for Israel. So, you can maybe peel some people away, or even like the Joe Rogan types who aren't necessarily so left or so right. They're a kind of new form of centrism that can be brought over with a stronger statement.
And I think Pete Buttigieg would be running as more of a centrist. That's going to bring us back to more of a sense of normalcy. I guess that would be his position as I'm starting to watch what he's doing by embracing.
Is that exciting
like you said,
to anyone?
Well, I don't know. That's never really worked out too well. Worked out for Bill Clinton, right? I don't know. We have to look at history fully to see
totally different
how
era.
often. Yeah, we're in a different era. We're not clutching our pearls as much. And I think the interesting thing to me, and what I think that we talked about earlier or in the last few days, is that Marjorie Taylor Greene is so unafraid to just kind of say things, even when they break apart from the loudest voices in her party. And so I don't understand why Pete Buttigieg, who wants to be very vocal, is not scared to just say, okay, there's many things that I said that agree with the Democratic Party. I break away from you here, or I stand firm with you here. Like, there should be stances that now, as you watch other people that are still accepted, like Marjorie Taylor Greene didn't ruin her graces with MAGA. I think people still listen to her. Trump still accepts meetings with her. Like, nothing changed, but you see that boldness has done her well. Mm-hmm. And so I don't understand why, more Democrats don't look to that and say, look, I'm going to do my own thing too, because it's okay to not be just going down ballot or following blindly. Like you said, when you listen to Trump, there's some things that you think are wrong. We should be able to say that. That's why we have elected officials. That's why we don't just get a king or a dictator. We literally elect them in office and can say, I like that, I don't like that. And I think more people should be critical with real solutions, especially if they want to be the next leader of the country. So,
well, next up, Bill Maher thinks the era of left-wing censorship and cancel culture might be coming to a close, but he still has some worries. We'll be right back.